A couple of days ago, we discussed the decision by the police in London and Manchester to arrest people who chant "globalize the Intifada" in pro-Palestinian protest, a response of sorts to the massacre in Bondi Beach, a response, of course, that shows, look, we're paying attention, but we are absolutely not going to do what needs to be done, but we're going to do something that will make you think, okay, look, they're doing something. That's, I think, the best description I can give for that decision. The BBC, of course, this brought the whole phrase back into the news, and the BBC made its point very clear and came in and said, look, globalized, the Intifada is actually peaceful. Let me start by reading from the latest edition of this article, and uh, this is at the end of it. This is what it says. The term Intifada came into popular use during the Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip in 1987. Some have described the term as a call for violence against Jewish people. Others have said it is a call for peaceful resistance for Israel's occupation of the West Bank and actions in Gaza. Then there's an update that says an earlier version of this article sought to explain the wider background to the Met and the GMP announcement by referring to the first Palestinian Intifada, including the description that it was, quote, largely unarmed, and the second Intifada. However, the language used in this brief summary did not give a clear enough or complete picture of the history, and so this section has been amended and instead explain the context around the ongoing use of the term. So yeah, BBC really lied, and then it changed the lie and replaced it with a I don't know if we should call it a lie, but certainly dishonest reporting by saying, here's what the two sides say. If you follow this story on social media, you will see people saying Intifada just means uprising in Arabic. Yeah, you can do that with a lot of things. You can do that with jihad. You can do that with Mein Kampf. A lot of things just mean something out of context. By the way, nobody said globalize Intifada. They say globalize the Intifada. So they're referring to the Intifada, the first one, where over 100, I believe it's 165 Israelis were murdered if I remember the number correctly. Then the second Intifada was much more successful, and over 1,000 Israelis were murdered. So yeah, this is the first one that they call largely unarmed, was mostly shooting, stabbing, Molotov cocktails, rock throwing, uh, none of which I would call unarmed, but maybe I'm getting the terms wrong here. Welcome to the reality show. I'm Razi Ginsburg, joined by Daniel Anders and Iyar. Iyar, you were too young to, oh no, you probably weren't even born during the first Intifada, but you, I think, know about it more, more than, well, I don't know if more than the people in the BBC who are reporting it, but certainly you're going to give us, I think, a more reality oriented understanding of it.
Yeah, so my first question for you is how elaborative to be, how much time do I have, how much to keep for later? I need to be a director for me, so I know how to navigate this issue.
A couple of minutes will go around, so you can, if you have a lot to say, you can split it into segments.
All right, so okay, so I'll start with just some concrete details about both intifadas, and then I have more philosophical essential things to say about it, so I might save it for later. Basically, the first intifada, it was started in 87, the late 80s. It's been throwing rocks at Jews, throwing Molotov cocktails, striking, demonstration, attempted murder. There were about 200 Israeli murdered. And the result of the first Intifada were the Oslo Accords. Okay, and the context of the reason it started, this is where I'll get later because it gets very interesting. The second Intifada was way more advanced. It has suicide bombers, shootings, charges, lynches, rockets. It was more orchestrated, It was more military style. It was directed by the PLO, which is who created this organization? Like who took this? The PLO was so weak in the early 90s. It was rejected by everyone, and Israel adopted it. Unfortunately, in the Oslo Accords, gave it legitimacy, gave it land, gave it political infrastructure, and of course, they used it to set up an army to kill more Jews. They just couldn't help it. And even after the second Intifada, which ended around 2005, we kept giving them moral sanction, and we got the rounds with Hamas and eventually October 7th. So when you say Intifada, you relate to two events. The first one was basically spontaneous murdering of Jews, and the second Intifada was an orchestrated, planned military-style murdering of Jews done by the same people that Israel gave them so much for a chance for peace. So this is what we're talking about. And I have a lot to say about it later on in the show.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. One of our dedicated daily trolls says, how did you get a Berg last name? I'd love to stop talking about substantive issues and go down to the gutter with you and insult your names, but none of you ever use your actual name or picture. We don't know who you are. All we know is that you are very likely in your mother's basement, but we don't know where she lives. So we're gonna go back to the issue at hand. Anders, your initial thoughts on the issue and how the BBC chose to report it.
Yeah, so thanks, ER, for that overview. I don't think I have much to add really to that part. But when it comes to BBC, if it weren't so serious, it's almost laughable. Their anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic bias that we see over and over again. And now, they're trying to retract. They're squirming like worms on a fish hook. But it won't change anything. So, I mean, the fundamental problem here, or one of the fundamental problems, if you look at BBC as such, is that it's a public broadcasting corporation. It's something that British citizens are forced to pay for through their licensing fees, and the idea that the state plays a role in media is a violation of free expression, of free speech. So Ayn Rand was very clear on these issues. He said that it's thought control basically that the state plays a role in this area. So fundamentally, I could sympathize with BBC if the leadership stood up and said that, you know what, we're in an impossible situation here to cater to everybody and to try to do this objective reporting that people define differently. Can you please privatize us, get rid of the funding over the next 10 years, and then we'll make do and try to survive in the free marketplace. Then they can basically, while trills, I would hope they would try to maintain some kind of objectivity, but they wouldn't have this yoke over themselves that they have to kind of represent everybody and everything in society, which leads to these outbreaks every time there is something coming up that people rightfully or wrongfully disagree with. So that's the fundamental issue at hand, I think. Now, unfortunately, we know that it's tragic that they are promoting or encouraging anti-Semitism as they are, which is, they wouldn't say that directly, obviously, but they're fueling the flames here.
I would love to see the day the BBC asks to be privatized. I expect
Yeah,
the day
it's my
Hamas
shining.
voluntarily disarms sooner than that
Well,
happens.
it's my shining city. How we get there. That's it's a long and crooked path, probably.
Daniel.
Yeah, so again, the reporting of BBC journalism, I don't know if we have the full text of what it was original, but if this is like the fixed version, that's even worse. Like having like the whole issue like the whole article is about the police arresting people for the chance of globalize the Intifada. What Intifada means is the core thing of understanding the issue. You cannot just say some people say that and some people say that. You cannot analyze the issue without knowing what it is. And here is how they have it, right? Some have described the term as call for violence against Jewish people. Others have said it is a call for peaceful resistance to Israel's occupation of the West Bank and actions in Gaza. Well, depending on which it is, the police action is just or unjust. So you cannot like leave this at the end of the article and just say, well, here, do with that with what you want. Like the whole reason why we have news or some opinion articles is to have, or for people who do not follow this like almost 24/7 like we do, have some understanding, and you give them with, we don't know, do with that with what you want. I mean, imagine this on like any other issue, right? It's some people say 6 million Jews died during the Holocaust. Some say the smokestacks didn't really fit and couldn't really make out the number of Jews that have been, like, you cannot just leave that out there and say, because even then, like, what is BBC saying? Are both of those valid? Are both of those equal? Like, some experts say this or some experts say this. No, one is a proper understanding of what it means, which is what ER started with. It calling for Intifada is for calling of killing Jews. That's why globalize the Intifada is being yelled at by people who kill Jews. That's why even things like Free Palestine is being yelled by people who have just finished the process of killing Jews, like the guy, I don't want to say his name even, the guy who killed the Jewish couple in Washington, D.C. He yelled Free Palestine when he did that. He didn't choose some specific, unique sort of, pure genocidal statement. He used Free Palestine. That is what it is. And, ER mentioned sort of the throwing stones example. And I know many people like try to even because I think even in the article, it says like it was like mostly peaceful or something like that. What was it specifically? Largely unarmed, which I'm not sure if stones act as unarmed. But again, nobody would accept that example on the other side because let's
Daniel,
say yeah,
they were unarmed. Their arms was free while they were wearing suicide vests.
that also works, I guess. But again, like let's say we consider BBC from somebody on the left, or I'm sure I could find articles about it, about January 6th. People there didn't have weapons. It didn't like make it so it somehow is not what it is. So again, like trying to focus so much on, it was large, or the Antifa BLM process largely peaceful, right? It's no, like look at the core of the issue of what is actually happening. I'm not comparing BLM to Intifada. I think Intifada was much worse. But again, we cannot just look at some specifics like, they're just throwing rocks or they're just doing this. No, what is the core goal? What are they trying to get away with? And fundamentally, BBC, like, you're supposed to be a news station. Give us some analysis of the situation, not just this happened. Some people say this, the neo-Nazis say this, and the Islamists say this. And it's like, okay, like, what is the point of you?
Yeah, unfortunately, we know what is the point of them. There was this tweet I saw a few days ago. I replied to it. You can go on my Twitter at Razi Ginsburg and see my reply. Somebody said, and this is when the BBC gives you both sides of what Intifada might mean, this is one of those sides. This guy says, I'm Arab. Intifada is an Arabic word meaning uprising. Uprising against tyranny and oppression. Against the longest belligerent occupation in modern history. Against apartheid and ethnic cleansing. If globalized Intifada means the world uniting against tyranny, then I support it. Me too. If globalized Intifada means the world united, if Free Palestine means between the river and the sea there should be a capitalist country, laissez-faire capitalism, I also support it. That's not what it means, and you know it's not what it means. And this guy, by the way, I recommend looking at his tweet because if you scroll down, there's people answering him and saying actually, Jews were slaughtered and like going into details. And he replies to them, and his reply is bullshit. Bullshit. Like literally to every person he replies bullshit because he knows the point of the tweet is the point of every piece of Palestinian propaganda that we've seen in the last 2 years and before, from the El Ali, Israel bombed El Ali hospital and 500 people died, to there was a famine and all that crap. The point isn't whether or not it's true. The point isn't even to argue that it is and bring up any facts. The point is to put it out there, and then people will hear it and people will repeat it, and then somebody will go take action and globalize the Intifada as they did in Bondi Beach. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can just throw something on specifically the wording, why is it being referred to as the Intifada? If there was just, a name for uprising, which, the American Intifada, if you want to use that instead of American Revolution. If it was, just the general term for something, some specific uprising or all of them uprising, which I think there is a Wikipedia article on like all of the intifadas, and it includes like pretty much every single like Arabic revolution. But when people say the Intifada, they don't mean some specific revolution during the Arab Spring. They don't mean, the Sahrawi people standing up against Moroccan government. They mean specifically First and Second Intifada, which is specifically Palestinians rising up to basically kill Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start with my drilling into this subject. So I think what we have here with the Intifada, to understand it, we need to look at it in the scope of form and essence. For example, when I look at a car, so a car is the essence, and the form could be a Mercedes, a Prius, Hyundai Jazz, whatever, all kind of particular cars. So Kamala Harris. Makama is the essence. I'm going back. The form is Intifada. The particular case is Intifada. The essence is a broader concept of Makawama. Makawama is a well-known concept in Arab nations, within Palestinians, and Makawama is the broader term of resistance. And it started after World War II, which is basically the Arabs of the world look at the example of, partisans and free people opposing Nazism, and they says, we're going to do the same thing branding-wise, but in essence, they actually do the opposite. Because when somebody was under a Nazi regime and he opposed it, he opposed tyranny. And we justly so look at these people as heroes. So the Arab says, we're going to steal their branding. We're going to say we're opposing tyranny, but actually they are opposing the free world in order to replace it with tyranny. In this case, Islamic tyranny. But they're going to brand it as if they're doing the opposite. This is a brilliant marketing move because they actually can use the same words and both sides will get the opposite idea. When they say Makawama to the Arab people, they're like, yeah, we're going to get this area from the colonizers and we're going to form a caliphate. For them, they truly, in their sick, perverted mind, think it's freedom. And when the Western world heard like Intifada resistance, they go, oh yeah, they're going to resist the tyrannical regimes and establish a paradise. They're going to be free. So this is, of course, a complete lie, complete inversion, complete absurd. They are fighting the free world in order to install a tyrannical regime, and they use a genius branding strategy to make it look the opposite way. The essence of it, the goal is to perform some sort of fraud, a conceptual fraud against the decent man in the West that doesn't know the terms deep enough and says, oh yeah, they're fighting tyranny, they're fighting for freedom, they're fighting for self-determination or whatever. But this is a complete and total lie. Now, I'm going to do, Razi, do I have time for a quick historical brief?
How quick?
Yeah, a few minutes.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So, before Israel was founded, so it was, let's say, go to the British mandate time, but already Arabs were massacring Jews. There was cooperation between the Arab leadership and the Nazis. We've talked about it a lot. Then, of course, there was the Holocaust. And then a few years later, finally, the British left. The mandate was off. and the Jews, the Zionists, funded the state of Israel, and this was, of course, war. This means war. The Arab nations invaded. The Palestinian Arabs, the Arabs in British Palestine already fought against the Jews since the British left or were about to leave, or like the declaration, the UN resolution to divide the country, whatever. Big war, all Arab nations. Israel survives. Israel is founded. Israel actually managed to survive against all odds because Israelis are passionate, smart, thinking, free people, fighting against all of these tyrannies. That a tyranny is a destruction of the mind, and therefore they really also tend to fail in the military sense, because you have a basically military of people who are essentially coming not from a free culture, not from a culture of thinking. Anyway, since 1948, Judea and Samaria is held by Jordan, and Gaza is held by Egypt. There is no such thing in essence, like nobody is referring to themselves as Palestinians anymore. Palestine is gone, and those people are Arab, and they're under Arab rule. So basically, since 1948, there's there is Egypt and there's Jordan, and they hold of these people, those Arab people, and they persecute them because this is what Arab countries do. The change starts, and by the way, nobody talks about Jordanian oppression over the Palestinians. Nobody talks about Egyptian oppression against the Palestinians. Nobody talking about freedom. Nobody talking about freeing them. It's just Arabs oppressing Arabs. This is completely normal for everyone, and nobody condemns that, because like if the same race oppresses themselves, this is their right, apparently, according to the West. In 1967, this is where everything changed. Israel is before the 6 Day War, Israel was in a really rough state. I was just talking today with Boaz Arad, and he was telling me how he remembers as a child in 1967, they were digging trenches around their house because they were under the conviction that sooner or later, it was a very tense time, like the Arab armies are going to get to their neighborhoods because they were threatening them. They were blockading Israel. Really rough time. And then Israel managed to do a preemptive attack in 1967. They're taking over Golan Heights. They're taking over the whole of Sinai Peninsula. They take over Judea and Samaria from their aggressive, tyrannical neighbors. And this is the period of time from 1967 to the 1980s where Israel is basically holding all of these territories. And under the Israeli rule, there are two types of in the Arab community that are now under occupation. There are two kind of people. There are like the somewhat decent people. Okay, we live in under Israeli rule. We have property right. We have everything. Let's trade. Let's live life. Let's live a simple life. That's great. And there are the bullies. There are the evil people. There are the terrorists. And of course, these are the Palestinians. And this is the branding they use. But since 1967, there was not much trouble under Israeli occupation. The trouble only started in the 1980s. So the question comes, what took them so long? What happened in those about 13 to 15 years? Well, Israel was strong. The bullies was afraid. The decent people were just living life, enjoying, the right for property, the right for freedom. They were living life basically as free people under Israeli rule. I know it sounds weird for you. Wow, how can you be free under occupation? Well, they were way freer rather than their life was under Jordanian or Egyptian rule, which is just traditional Arab governments. Nobody mentions that. Of course, it doesn't really fit the narrative of all of those anti-Semites. But basically, Israel really secured their rights during this time. Now, what changed? What caused the rise of Palestinianism? What caused the rise of terrorism? Well, there were like three major events, I would say. The first major event is the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979. 1979, the Mullah regime rises up, and they start immediately. First of all, it's like when the communists rose to power in 1917. They basically demonstrated to the Islamic world that it is possible to take over nations by force and implement Islamic law, Sharia law, complete, taking away the rights of people, forcing people to live as believing Muslims, following all the commandments of Islam, and being basically like slaves to the tribe, slaves to the husband, slave to the state, slave to the imam. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was the Jabril deal. Basically, Israel made a deal with a terrorist in Lebanon, and they freed a bunch of terrorists in exchange for hostages. And the third thing was the peace accords with Egypt. During the late 1970s, basically, Israel negotiated peace with Egypt that went on from 1980 to 1982. It was actually like happening, and Israel gave away Sinai Peninsula. So basically, the Arab bullies under Israeli rule learned that Israel is willing to give up for terror, is willing to give land for peace, and they have the backing of, back then, the KGB and Soviet Russia and the Islamic Revolution in Iran. All of these factors together gave the Arabs motivation to uprise against Israel, to perform the idea of Makawama, to violently fight the free Western world so they can take over, murder all the Jews, and employ tyranny over themselves. So this is when the bully Palestinian faction took over the Arab identity of those living under Israeli rule. And basically, this is what started the first Intifada. And the crazy part is that those bullies, their strategy actually worked. Their strategy worked. They were right with their understanding. They were pure evil, but they got it right that if they will use enough violence against Israel, enough terror, they will actually be rewarded by Israel, unfortunately. And Israel surrendered to them in 1993 by taking Arafat and giving him all of this power and authority and moral sanction to lead the Palestinian state, or over there it was like territories, and using that, everything got from Israel, the territory, the land, the money, the guns that Israel supplied for them. So they will be, expressing their identity and self-determining themselves. He used it to create more and more terror and death to Israel. This is how we got the second Intifada. And since then, we know history. So we had Intifadas, we've had operations in Judea and Samaria, we've had affairs in Gaza, Israel giving it completely away for the Palestinians, Hamas taking over, all of those fighting with Hamas, and then eventually October 7th.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, we must accept BBC has passed its sell-by date by several decades. Yeah, that's even that is generous towards the BBC. I mean, look, they have the charter, which of course is a complete joke. Nobody notices that charter, let alone it's brought up from time to time as an argument against the BBC, but nothing ever happens. Jeremy Bowen, being the head of the international desk at the BBC, is a joke. He has spoken out in support of the Palestinians. He has spoken out in support of repeating Hamas numbers without while knowing they're incorrect. And his words were, well, these are the only numbers we get. What do you expect us to do? Not report anything? To which any reasonable person would say, of course you don't report anything if the only numbers you get are from the murderers who started the war and have repeatedly given you false numbers and false stories. And you've repeatedly repeated them. Yael mentioned, I think this is where I disagree with you, is the brilliant marketing of them as some sort of victim or something like that. It's brilliant marketing in the sense that it's successful marketing because people want to buy into it. I think of how left-wing people always complain that they're victims of marketing, and no, you can see a billboard and not buy the product, and if you buy the product, you probably would have anyway. And that, I think, that is the people wanted to buy into something, and they buy into this, and we see it with the last 2 years of Palestinianism. So little substance in any of their arguments, and just a bunch of words that how dare you, if you disagree with us, you're pro-genocide, you're pro-starving children, you want to kill children, and that's how most of the conversation is for these people. So yeah, but anyway, Anders.
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up question for ER, because we know that there are a couple of million, I think, Arabs living in Israel, and yeah, I'm sure they have their grievances, but overall they live a much better life than people across the border, whether that is in Jordan or Egypt or Lebanon. So that kind of reminds me of Switzerland. I lived in Switzerland for a couple of years, and that's another example of how a country with multiple minorities, language-wise, religious-wise, etc., can live well together because they create a situation or a state that is so superior to their neighbors that nobody really wants to move. So my question to you here is what are the sentiments of the Arab population, and how has it developed over these last few decades, as we, from 67 to 73 to the first to the second Intifada, and now with the October 7th?
It's very complex. So there are Arabs living in cities, in mixed cities, and these are like the most, integrated parts of society. They work and trade and live and talk with Jews all the time, and it's usually a good relationship. There are Arabs living, in Muslim villages, and they could hold more of a jihadi point of view. Of course, they'll enjoy, the welfare money they get from Israel and all of that, but they basically anti-Israeli, anti-Zionist, and they might even at some point, use arms against Israel when the opportunity will come. And there are Bedouin in the desert that are basically acquiring firearms in an amount that wouldn't, it's basically paramilitary almost. And it's very troubling. They might someday do something with that. Now, I'm not saying this out of nowhere. There were uprising a few years ago, including in mixed city, where Israeli Arabs performed spontaneous acts of terror against Jews. So it's a very weird situation. On the one hand, they are integrated in society. They, of course, enjoy rights and defense from the state. But on the other hand, some of them have an ideology, which is a completely jihadi ideology. Now, in Israel, we don't really explicitly address this situation in the way we should address it. We should give no moral sanction to such people. We should arrest the imams inciting terror and supporting terror and knowing about terrorists, of course, not reporting them, which is being complicit in a crime. We don't do that. We have Shin Bet, we have the Shabak that prevents, bombings and terrorism and things from within. But the judicial system and the police and the culture in general, Israel is very forgiving for such people. So it's a very complicated situation. And the primary solution is to stop giving moral sanction to people living primitive life, to people holding jihadi ideology, and to demonstrate to them that this is not acceptable, not culturally, and not in the form of the state. It should be a crime, and it is not right now, and that's a mistake.
So is it a trend that the tensions are increasing, or?
I think it comes in waves, but the trend is that it's not an explicit tension, which means nobody really talks about it. But the fact is that those communities are acquiring assault rifles. Now, in Israel, a citizen could, under some terms, can legally carry a handgun, but it is illegal to privately own an assault rifle. Yet Arab tribes are acquiring assault rifles and charges and klimagors and bombs in amounts that are basically organizing as a military against the state.
Yeah, and I have to add, this is, multiculturalism may not be as big in Israel as it is in some places in the West, but it's big enough that, there are things that if they happen among some Jewish communities would be taken care of much quicker than in Arab communities. I'm going to be less generous than Yael and say most of the Arab Israeli community is a big problem that needs to be dealt with sooner rather than later, because later will mean after something very, very bad happens. Okay, let me quickly go to the super chat. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, I filed a complaint about Bowen with BBC in 2024. I'd be interested to know what kind of reply you got, but I know he's still there, so it can't be, it couldn't have been the right reply. Anders, anything to add?
No, you may continue.
Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on the Arab Israelis specifically to sort of go to Anders's point, like this isn't even unique about Israel, and I think this is the result of tribalism, of basically, it's your tribe you have to stick to, not some specific values of the state, not some specific, values you even want to achieve in your life. Like, we are talking about Arab Israelis where there is like an active movement to destroy the state of Israel, to basically get those Arabs become the part of the Palestinian state. But we have that in Slovakia. We have politicians of Hungarian descent who are calling for annexation of southern Slovakia into Hungary, who are referring to oftentimes to Slovakia as Felvidek, which was the name for Slovakia for 1,000 years during the Hungarian rule. Felvidek means like highlands or like upper highland, with Slovakia being the mountainous region of of what used to be Hungary, or like Greater Hungary. So we have both of us, like Hungary, and this is what even the Prime Minister of Hungary does. He is supremely irredentist. He's like actively calling for like occupation and annexation of the former lands. And we are talking about countries that both of them are in NATO, both of them are in EU, Hungary is stepping away from them being liberal democracy, but all of them are basically, there shouldn't be something like that. The idea that you have still like tribalist ethnic groups calling for independence in anywhere in EU or anywhere in Western countries is insane. Yet here we even see it, like politicians actually being involved in that. So yeah, I mean, tribalism gets you wherever you are. Now going into another point I wanted to bring a bit earlier is when it comes to sort of the opposition when it comes to Israel. And I think there is a certain acceptance that one, that somehow civil disobedience is automatically good or should be something that praised for, rather than, it should be about what exactly are they calling for. Like, let's assume all of the Palestinian movement was peaceful. It's still not good. Like it's not a good value. Even if you peacefully call for establishment of an Islamic regime, that's not good. I mean, there's nothing to defend that. Just because they are not actively killing people doing that doesn't make it good. It's always should be about the values. And then the claim oftentimes is the Palestinians have tried peacefully to fight against Israel, have tried to demand the end of occupation or anything in that regard, and Israel didn't bend, so now they have to choose. They are forced to do violence because they have no other means. But again, Israel shouldn't have bended it, even if it was just civil disobedience, which again it wasn't. But even if it was, there was nothing good about it. It shouldn't been put forward there. Yeah, and nobody should have supported. But this is again sort of, I guess, another example of tribalism or something similar to that, and that feelings are decent, like a good enough thing for people to get your support. Palestinians feel like they're occupied. Palestinians feel they want to have a state. We don't care what kind of state. We don't care what values they hold. We don't care what kind of culture it is, simply because they want it, because certain ethnic group wants independence. That in alone makes it good enough to basically justify it. And I would use one example of this. I don't know if you guys ever looked into the situation in Western Sahara. Like, I don't know if you guys know like anything about it.
I don't know much, but some, yeah.
It's a like I just looked into it because I wanted to finally know what's happening. It's like the weirdest thing ever. Like Western Sahara is considered like occupied by Morocco, and it has like and it's actually very similar to the Sahrawi people, which are the people that are denied independence, are actually very similar to Palestinian in many ways. They have their own liberation organization. They have their own intifadas actually, but it's like the Sahrawi people in Western Sahara are full citizens of Morocco, can vote in elections, both local, national, are fully integrated into society, but by international community, it's still considered an occupied territory. What is happening here? And again, that's the sort of like feelings. And basically, the idea is that when Spain basically pulled away from Western Sahara, it didn't allow people to like have a vote if they want to be independent republic or part of Morocco. And because of that, it's like it's the second longest occupation in the world right now after Israel, of course. But again, it's like the weird focus on like feelings or something bad happened some time ago, so now forever it has to be this. Yeah, again, it's like the weirdest thing ever. Well, it's not weird. We know what is happening. It's complete lack of proper understanding of the purpose of states and what they are supposed to do, and when they are proper, when they are improper, and what calls for independence are proper and what are improper.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. One of the trolls in the chat said, by the way, before I get to the troll, yeah, Daniel, what you just said, and generally what we're talking about, global balkanization, Ayn Rand's essay on tribalism is a must read for everybody. I'm sure it is. I'm almost sure it's available for free on the Ayn Rand Institute website, but Google global balkanization, and if it is, it'll come up. If not, it's worth the price of what's the collection of essays? Is it The Voice of Reason? Is it what's the one where it's look it up, you'll find it. It's
Isn't
worth
it
it.
for the new intellectual?
No. For the new intellectual is for the new intellectual and some stuff that is from the novels. Okay, the troll in the chat says I need a detox after this level of retardism. OMG, even animals might be more reasonable and understand this. Anyway, you're here every single day. I'm sure a detox would do you good, a mental detox, but not the kind you think. Um, so
Just quickly,
yeah.
because somebody pointed out Tibet. So Tibet is apparently considered part of China. It's not considered an occupied territory by international law. I don't know why. Probably because, as with everything, China is a permanent UN Security Council member. So I assume all of their territory has to be intact. I mean, like Taiwan is not considered independent, are China. So why would you expect that Tibet would be considered an occupied territory?
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Hadrian renamed Judea to Syria, Palestina after Second Revolt. And thank you, Use Your Delusion, for gifting an Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube membership. I can't see for some reason, I can't see it in the chat. Daniel, if you can see who got it, whoever it is,
Corey Peltzman.
congratulations. You now have access to, for the next month, for some of our stuff behind a paywall, which includes our Atlas Shrugged Book Club, our sessions on objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and much more. So make sure you make use of that. Um, within the Palestinian propaganda network, let's call it unofficial network, there's people know their place. So the tweet I read earlier from the guy who started with "I'm Arab," as kind of why we should take him at his word. Uh, he knows his place in that within that. The BBC know their place. They have to say it in certain ways that are like what they said here. I will read it again. Um, the term Intifada came into popular use during the Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip in 1987. Some have described the term as a call for violence against Jewish people. Others have said it is a call for peaceful resistance to Israel's occupation of the West Bank and actions in Gaza. You know, the BBC can do that with anything. They can do that with October 7th. Some have called it, the biggest massacre of Jews and an act of terrorism, the biggest massacre since the Holocaust. Others have called it the Al-Aqsa flood and said it's legitimate uprising. And then those who want to try to make serious arguments in support of Palestinianism can say, look, even the BBC has said this or that, and then the Owen Joneses of the world will come in, I guarantee you, and they will say, um, the BBC is pro-Israel because why are they giving this when clearly we know Intifada means peaceful uprising to peacefully create a country where everybody loves each other and Arabs who just wanted to kill Jews up until the creation of this new country and Jews who thought they wanted a country of their own actually so yeah, the BBC knows what they're doing. Their editors know what they're doing. Whoever wrote this knows what they're doing, and they, in between instances of them trying to pretend to be fair and accurate reporters of the news, we do have those moments where the Jeremy Bowens of the world, or people who left the BBC and are now free to express their views more directly, tell us who they really are, where they really stand, and it is always on the side of the terrorists. And that is what the BBC is doing with this. And now, again, I've said I don't think this banning of the phrase is ideal. What I would like to see is the authorities actively go not to everybody who chants a phrase, which will create photo ops of old people getting arrested, people in wheelchairs getting arrested, uh, where they maybe that should be a part of it, but actively go to look into every single person who chants Free Palestine, who chants Globalized Intifada, who waves a PLO flag, every organization from the big organizations, the Solidarity, whatever they're called, to the boycott, divestment, sanctions, to any student campus club, Palestine campus club, to organizations that do a bunch of things, but this is a part of them. Check if they actually do mean what they say and are planning to act on their views, because otherwise you will get another attack like Manchester, another attack like Bondi Beach. You will get more such attacks, and then you will say, "Oh, look, we're doing what is it? We're sending more police to Jewish areas." Keir Starmer, I think, announced that today or yesterday that he's spending more money to protect Jewish communities. You want to protect. First of all, it's not just Jewish communities. You want to protect your country from terrorism. You actively go and look into the people who say that they support terrorism, who say this is an important moral cause to kill innocent people. Because again, some of them are just saying this. Some of them will act on it. Yeah.
We're living in crazy times. I don't know what to say about it. It's not easy.
Yes, it is not easy, but we're gonna keep fighting this fight. Anders?
Yes, I wanted to. I guess we're approaching our wrap up here, but I wanted to give you a few quotes from Ayn Rand on the subject specifically about the government involvement in the press and how damaging that is. So she said in the Ayn Rand letter in 1972, Volume 1, Number 19, there is no difference between a government-run economy and a government-run press. In both cases, the government is the arbiter of truth. And what you just mentioned, Razi, on how BBC is legitimizing, and people look to BBC and say, look, this is what BBC is saying, so it must be true, and in that sense, they become the direct and indirect arbiter of truth. She said in Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, in the essay, The Press, a Free or Regulated Industry, freedom of the press means freedom from government control. She said again, in Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, censorship can be exercised not only by direct suppression, but by any indirect means that penalize or intimidate men for expressing certain ideas. And I mean, we see that all the time, and especially we have it here in the US, but in the UK with the thought control laws and that are getting stricter and stricter. And finally, on the danger of public interest standards, she had an article, Have Gun, Will Nudge, in the Ayn Rand letter back in 1962. The public interest is an undefined and undefinable concept, which means whatever a given bureaucrat chooses it to mean. So when we talk about the BBC, the NPR, the PBS here in the US are in the public interest, it's BS. It's invalid concept or some kind of not valid concept. So she was out front on this issue throughout her entire career, her entire life. So go back and read up on this topic. You can use Chat GPT or something else to find the specific quotes.
Daniel.
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with Yara. It's hard to really have anything to finish this with. But I guess, again, I think the most insane part of this whole thing is, as I've said at the start, the fact that the whole article was about the phrase globalize the Intifada and what exactly it means because police is arresting for it. And the answer of BBC is, we don't know what it means, so we pretty much have no opinion. I mean, if and we already are seeing, more statism coming into not just the United Kingdom, but most of the Western nations. But if the defense of by media, which again, independent media should be the first one to yell when something bad is happening, and if this is how they'll defend my civil rights in the future, is some say Daniel shouldn't be hanged at the public square. Some say he should. We don't know. Then I'm not really looking forward to my trial.
Well, if you want to exercise not just your muscles, although this is big and heavy, it'll exercise that as well, but your mind as well on this topic. Victory Now. I'm gonna leave it to Yal. I think Daniel, we have a picture from our Christmas party. Do we have that picture? Yes, this is all of us at the Christmas. That's me in a Jonathan Honig t-shirt, by the way. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe if you're watching on a big screen. Yeah, those are also available, by the way. But yeah, okay, let's not dox everybody too long. But that was us at the Christmas party with our copies of Victory Now. Yal, why should people buy it?
Well, we have a problem, guys. I don't know if you've noticed, but our beautiful life, wonderful life on this planet is in danger. And there are some people that thinks that Allah or Muhammad wants them to kill you, and your friends and politicians are giving the moral sanction and are pretty critical against one of the only nations in the world actually fighting against those willing and working in favor of the destruction of the West. And you should know the moral case for Israel. You should know there is a way for Israel to win. You should know what is needed, and you should know how not to give moral sanction to those crazy, evil jihadists, and how to stand for the case against them and the case for freedom for the West and for Israel. And this book brings it on. This book shows the moral case for the West, the moral case for Israel, the moral case against Islamic tyranny, the moral case against the fake right of self-determination of nation to become a tyranny. And it shows a plan of how to do it. And this is a big, hefty book, interesting book, shall I say, filled with wonderful, beautiful content aimed for that purpose. It is available at www.victory.now. You can sign up for the movement. You can donate to us. You can get a link to Amazon to order this beautiful, wonderful, marvelous book. I also want to share that I'm an associate of the Ayn Rand Center Israel. We've had a great event today. We've also released a Hebrew version of Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand, which I'm very proud of. So there is a lot of work going on, a lot of things we're doing. I'm very proud. I'm very happy I get to finally hold this book in my hands. I've been working so hard for it to arrive to this position. The people in the movement of Victory Now worked really, really hard to make this happen, to write this book and to release it. So I'm really happy to have it. And you can have it too. You can hold it in your hand. You can send us images of you holding this book, and Razi might be willing to show it on the show as well. So to do that, all you have to do is to purchase the book and send us a picture of you holding it, and we'd love to share it.
Yeah, somebody in the chat says, Victory Now? The title sounds very warlike. Just saying. Well, I have to say, it sounds very ending warlike, because, you know, war, as I like to say, it's not tango. It doesn't take two. One side needs to decide there is a war, and that side has decided. The other side, in this case, is still strong enough to be able to decide to end the war. So yeah, it does very much sound like what it says on the cover, Israel's plan for peace. Anders, where could people find more from you?
Well, first, I just ordered the book, the Kindle version. So there's both Kindle and paperback available on Amazon. So it's just one click away for everybody who is in the US. So very easy. You can find me on Substack, andersingemarson.substack.com. And my book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, is also available on Amazon as Kindle version, ebook, paperback, or audio. So check it out.
Daniel, where can people find more from you?
Well, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Damned Dan, and my book. No, I don't have one yet. But actually, Clementine in the chat gave me an idea for a new article. So maybe we can give a short plug to our Substack, where hopefully.
We are relaunching our Substack soon, and there is an article from Daniel coming. I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. I will be here tomorrow on the Daily Objective talking about Ben Shapiro's fantastic talks in the Heritage Foundation and AmFest, the Turning Point USA conference, going after the people who need to be called out in the conservative movement. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow with the Daily Objective.